If you want to become a good programmer, be prepared to write code, and more code. Programming can be a challenging field to conquer if you don't practice it enough. Especially with subjects like data structures and design patterns, you must put your theoretical skills to the test and apply the concepts through code. So should you just write any code, or is there a proper approach to using it? There is no limit to writing code, and you can try different tools and projects by yourself. However, working on some standard projects will give you a deeper understanding of critical coding tools and techniques. On top of that, recruiters will often ask questions about specific projects because of the learning outcomes that these projects can offer. Therefore, even though I don't discourage building your own projects, I will talk about some of the top projects you should add to your experience. These projects focus on some of the most basic and advanced programming skills, helping you become better at your craft. Before we dive into the projects, there are some important items to touch on. First, you're going to get yourself on GitHub. I always emphasize on building a GitHub profile, and you get access to open source projects and can create more robust programming profile. On top of that, when you work on different projects with other programmers, it always helps to polish your skills. So why are coding projects important? It doesn't matter if you're trying to project for an academic assignment or doing it as a hobby. Coding projects will help you somewhere down the line during your career. It has three main advantages. First, we have skill enhancement. First off, it doesn't matter how complex or straightforward code you write, it always helps to improve your coding skills. When you work on more significant projects, you will primarily learn new tools and techniques on how to enhance your skill set. Next, we have resume building. Working on coding projects is perhaps the easiest way to build a stronger resume. Recruiters prefer experience, and if you have multiple projects on your resume, it should help you land a job interview. More importantly, when you work on different projects, you can tailor your resume according to the job requirements and mention most relevant projects to recruiters. Next, you get a feel for the industry. Lastly, if you're on online platforms like GitHub, you'll find many open source projects that you can contribute to. Often, software companies and startups post different open source projects, so working on these projects will help you understand the essential tools and skills required by the industry. You can get a feel for the kinds of problems the industry faces, which means you can focus more on the relevant skills. With that out of the way, it's time to see the top coding projects if you want to gain all the benefits that we just discussed. First, build a text editor. Text editors top the list of essential coding projects mainly because they test your basic coding skills. Companies like Microsoft regularly ask candidates about text editors in their interviews. Interestingly, building a basic text editor like Notepad is slightly more complicated than you might think, and it tests your abilities as a coder. When you make a text editor, you will understand the workings of GUI frameworks, stack operations, data storage, and much more. Once you build a text editor successfully, you'll have a pretty good understanding of learning a two-stack model, using tree data structures for text editor scaling, pattern-based searching with regular expressions, and text styling. You can build text editors in any language, and it doesn't rely too heavily on additional tools, so it's a must-try coding project. The second project we have is a graphing calculator. Graphing calculators are great if you want to learn to make web apps or GUI-based projects. Graphing calculators will teach you the implementation of mathematical operations and interface the code with graphical elements like buttons and display boxes. More importantly, a calculator is a flexible project because there's no limit to adding functionalities. The more code, the better functionalities it can get. When you make a graphical calculator, you will understand how to make user-defined functions, work with complex expressions in text fields, design UI components, and implement tree structures. This project is a must-try if you are interested in front-end development because it focuses on GUI skills. The third project is a snake game. If you're a programming student, I'm pretty sure at some point a teacher asks you to build a snake game for a coding assignment or a project. I believe that every programmer should know how to build this game because it teaches some core elements of programming. Interestingly, there are thousands of ways to make this game that lets the programmer think creatively. Some companies like Amazon often ask their candidates about this game code and design elements. Recruiters want to understand how you can approach the design differently. For instance, they could ask you to tinker with the algorithm so the game doesn't restart every time the snake bites itself. Even though it's a simple 2D game, it leaves a lot to learn by focusing on critical areas such as GUI design, algorithm design, and data structures. So it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a professional programmer, the snake game is a must-try if you want to enhance your coding and rendering technique. The fourth project we have is Space Invaders. Speaking of 2D games, Space Invaders is a fantastic option to learn data structures and design patterns. This game focuses more on your algorithm design skills rather than putting out fancy gameplay. Therefore, it tests your skills in art, 2D graphics, and algorithm design techniques. Like the Snake game, you can build the Space Invader game in 2D graphic libraries like Pygame. Once you're done with the coding, it'll leave you with the following key learning elements. Understanding how to draw and create dynamic objects on screen through code. Learn about gaming loops, and how to handle user events like mouse and keyboard input. How to apply gaming logic and interface it with GUI. And how to work with state machines for the enemy's artificial intelligence. The fifth project we have is a web crawler. Search engines use web crawlers to index websites across the internet. However, if you're a beginner coder, it's okay that you don't know how web crawlers work. This project is mainly for students who are about to graduate and are preparing for interviews. Companies like Google often ask about web crawlers and how they work. Those who know the answers are often the best candidates and go further in the recruitment process. Web crawlers involve complex understanding of databases, data structures, and web design, so therefore they can be pretty tricky. You need to be patient and at the same time work diligently to complete a web crawler successfully. However, when you succeed at building a web crawler, it'll leave you with priceless learning and skills that will come handy later in the interview. If you don't have a traditional computer science background, check out my video on how I became a software engineer without a CS degree so you can see how it's done. See you in there.